So in terms of the agenda, to start with, we'll be defining employee well-being and what this means for both employee and employer. Then we're going to be moving on to understanding well-being factors for employees. From here, we're then going to discuss strategies for fostering well-being in the workplace. And then we'll have a Q&A session where hopefully we'll be able to deal with any questions that you guys have. And then from there, we'll then go on to the close and then sort of wrap up what we've learned and sort of take away any key takeaways from each panelist and myself. So the first thing is talking about employee well-being. So for me, I think employee well-being refers to the holistic state of physical, mental, and emotional health that individuals experience within their workplace. And it normally encompasses factors such as job satisfaction, work-life balance, mental resilience, and a supportive workplace culture. There are several benefits of employee well-being for both individuals and organizational success, and some of them include, and not limited to, increased productivity. When you have an engaged workforce, it's more productive and more motivated, and the individuals are likely to be more focused, more creative, and efficient in their tasks, which is very important for the organization. And again, it allows employees within the workplace to collaborate a lot more with one another. Another thing that it offers is talent attraction and retention. It allows you to attract top talent and retain skilled employees, which is vital in this day and age. As you can appreciate, going through COVID and all that scenario, individuals are looking for a company where they can actually feel as if they're valued and their well-being is at the top of the spectrum and top of the list as such. This and then links to being a significant factor in recruitment and retention of efforts. Again, if you're looking to retain staffs, the idea here is that the well-being is at the top of the list. So if an individual or employee feels as if they are being looked after, they'll remain at the company for longer and they won't look elsewhere for other jobs or other companies, which is very important for organizations. There are also some studies and research that highlight the impact of well-being, productivity, and engagement. Two in particular studies that I want to discuss today is one study showed that addressing workplace well-being increases productivity as much as 12%, and that for every pound that we invest in an employee in a well-being initiative, companies see a return on investment of between 5 and 12 times within 1 year. Now, for me, that's huge. To invest in well-being initiatives to get a return on investment in terms of 5 to 12 times is a huge amount for any company. So that is one study that's sort of shown that. The second study is looking into happiness and productivity. And it's found that workers are 13% more productive when they are happy. This specific research was conducted in contact centers for BT over a 6-month period. Now, in order to get an employee happy and productive, again, there aren't major things that we need to do, and we'll discuss this further in the webinar, but to see that you're 13% more productive once that's being done is a huge amount for any company. I think employers have a vital role in ensuring the well-being of employers. And there's certain things that can be done from the employer side in order to make sure that the well-being is at the top of the list. Some examples include encouraging open communication. When employees feel comfortable about sharing their ideas and concerns and feedback without the fears of retribution, they're normally very open in terms of speaking about what they really truly think about. The last thing you want is for employees to hold back their thoughts and not be comfortable with sharing their concerns and feedback as a whole. Another thing that could be done is emphasizing inclusivity and diversion. Inclusive workplaces where diversity is celebrated allows employees to feel accepted, appreciated, and valued for their unique perspectives and backgrounds. As you can appreciate, every individual comes from a different background and perspective. So you have to embrace that in order for your employees to be happy within the organization. So with that being said, I want to start by asking my first question to the panel today. So the question is, what do you do to manage your well-being, and how does it improve your performance? So if I can, I'd like to come to Sue first and then shortly go into Georgia after that.
Okay, so for me, and I've taken years to kind of hone this, and this is what really works for me, but I guess I believe that the 9 till 5 is quite outdated. It doesn't work for me. I think people's kind of sitting at their desks between 9 and 5 and rotting and clock watching. There's no way you can be productive for 8 hours solid, even with taking a lunch break, which in this day and age a lot of people don't do. We're all told to take breaks, but the reality is that we have, you know, emails piling up, work piling up, deadlines, and also, you know, sometimes it's limited with what you can do with a 10-minute break. You know, you can't take the dog for a walk or go for a coffee with a colleague or anything. It's a limited amount of time. So people tend to just push on psychologically and think that if they work harder, then they'll see some sort of meritocracy or reward for what they do, or they'll just get done sooner. But unfortunately, the human body isn't designed to work like that. We suffer from dehydration. We suffer from lack of concentration, as our brains can't work solidly for that amount. Our brain works on glucose solely. So if we just kind of stick to our 3 meals a day, then you're going to have natural drops in the day at sort of 11 o'clock and 3 o'clock slumps where you're not going to work effectively. You'll also probably not drink water or hydrating fluid throughout the day. A lot of people go for teas and coffees because they're sedentary and therefore they feel they need the caffeine to boost them. Caffeine is a diuretic. It's also toxic to the body once you go over 200 milligrams of caffeine a day, which is 1 shot of bought coffee. So even if you have a latte with a single shot, you're at your maximum caffeine intake for the day. So it's estimated that over 40% of the UK adult population are in caffeine toxicity. Now, what this means is chronic dehydration, chronic fatigue, peaks and troughs of glucose levels, dehydration, and suboptimal functioning of the brain, which is not good for performance or workplace mental or physical health. So for me, this is really around keeping my hydration up, working when I want to work. I often work sort of 6 till 8:30. Then I go and do stuff in the rush hour because I don't want to travel then, like walk the dog or sort out stuff for the day, reply to emails. Then I usually go to one of our clinics and see patients and help them, give health advice, do blood tests, things like that. I always make sure that we incorporate natural breaks. I enjoy what I do, but obviously, like anyone, I'm only human. So I really do as I say as well. I'm not one of these do as I say, not as I do. So I make sure that I can incorporate exercise into every day, even if it's just walking. It could be anything. I alternate my exercises. Yesterday, I went to Ninja Warrior UK at 3 p.m. and then carried on working with my nieces. So working into the evening as I took that time out. I make sure that my vitamins are optimized so that my hormones and hydration are at their best and that I don't suffer from ill mental health. A lot of people don't realize that suboptimal vitamins are one of the main causes for anxiety and depression. And people will think they're menopausal and things like that, when actually the problem is just vitamin deficiency. We see a lot of women that are convinced they're menopausal, and actually they're just vitamin deficient and they're nowhere near menopause. So that's a kind of issue as well with awareness, is everyone thinks they've got what's being spoken about. So I make sure I do as I say around that. I also make sure that I get relaxation. I have a 10-month-old baby, so it's not that easy, but he is in nursery some of the time. But I make sure that I relax and sleep as much as I can, albeit it's broken, but I make up for that with supplements like glutathione and NAD, which allow my REM sleep to be much more effective. So I'm still getting that. So quite atypical, I guess, in the amount of effort I put into my well-being, but what you'd expect for director of a wellbeing company. There's some different things in there that you might not have heard of. So that's really the main areas I focus on, as well as of course, a good diet as well.
Amazing. Thank you very much for that, Sue. I appreciate all the detail there. Coming to yourself next, Georgia.
Thanks, Sachin and Sue. I smiled at myself when you were talking about caffeine because I think I'm on my 3rd coffee of today, and it's 1:30. So I'm definitely in a, I definitely probably have caffeine toxicity. Not a good thing. I think, in terms of what I do to support my well-being, I suppose, I think for me, it's always been about recognizing and constantly reassessing what good and what healthy looks like for me in any given moment, and like with that full recognition that my responsibilities are constantly shifting and changing, and my workload is constantly shifting and changing, and everything that's going on outside of my work is moving around. And I mean that, you know, that recognition, the context of my physical, my mental, and my emotional health. I think I'm someone that personally thrives off routine and structure. And there are, of course, you know, many like fundamental aspects of my sleep, getting good nutrition, making sure I'm moving throughout the day, and making sure I'm getting those pockets of rest throughout the day, which I personally find beneficial. But also, as someone that has struggled with the kind of suffocating and stifling nature, I suppose, of anxiety, I think one of the biggest things for me has been learning much more about my emotional and my mental health, and really like being the active listener in my own experience, and recognizing what situations are causing like that, perhaps, you know, like trigger in my anxious thoughts, and you know, being really curious and like constantly taking the time to check in. And I think that for me is a huge thing, like giving myself the time and the space to press pause throughout my day, rather than moving through it in this kind of like autopilot manner, which I think is so easy to do if you're not paying attention. And then I think the second part of the question was on performance. And I think of performance in terms of, I want to feel well and feel in a good place or a good space, so that I can, you know, show up for myself in the way that I want to show up. I can show up for my clients, but I can also show up for my friends and family, and feel energized and engaged in everything that I'm doing. And yeah, I guess it really just comes back to that idea of self-reflection, and recognize like what's working for me and what's not working for me, and like constantly making those tweaks.
That's perfect, Georgia. I mean, really appreciate you sharing that. I think from my perspective, the thing that I've taken away from both of you, both yourself and Sue, is that self-reflection is so important. Because if you don't spend time to self-reflect, then you won't really know what works for you. You won't really understand how you can enhance your performance, and most of all, how you actually control your well-being. Because I think from my perspective, each individual has their own perspective on how that looks for them. So if you don't self-reflect, it becomes very challenging in order to understand, you know, what is it that I need to do? And Sue mentioned some stuff about caffeine, and you laughed about it yourself. But, you know, how many of us are in the morning having that quick coffee and thinking, oh, I'm ready for the day? And before you know it, it can change the whole dynamic of how you feel. So I really appreciate you both sharing that. And I think self-reflection is a huge thing for well-being. So thank you for that, guys.